we're following the breaking news tonight. Hurricane Erin already walloping parts of the East Coast, stirring dangerous waves, high tide in North Carolina just moments away. Now, Erin is not expected to make landfall, but officials warn its impacts could be severe. Here's North Carolina Governor Josh Stein today.
We are anticipating coastal flooding from massive waves, tropical storm force winds, and tidal and storm surge for much of the state shoreline, life-threatening rip currents for most of the week. No one should be in the ocean.
Now, over the past 2 days, crews have rescued dozens of people from those rip currents on popular East Coast beaches. We have CNN's Diane Gallagher in North Carolina's Outer Banks, CNN's Omar Jimenez in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and CNN's Derek Van Dam is in CNN's hurricane headquarters. And we start, Derek, with you. What's the latest forecast telling you?
Okay, so we have the outer rain bands of this massive hurricane now starting to scrape the Outer Banks of North Carolina. 110-mile-per-hour winds. This is the latest radar, and you can start to see these bands, the outer edge, the outer periphery of Hurricane Erin and its wind field. This is when the tropical storm force winds could start to impact the Outer Banks and the very coastal areas of North Carolina. Right now, gusts at Hatteras right around 26 miles per hour, so not quite to that tropical storm strength, but we know it's coming, right? So it's agitating the western Atlantic, sending these huge waves breaking 15 to 20 feet. That's nearly 2 stories high. Now think about the high tide, which is occurring right about now. And then we're going to go through that low tide cycle at about midnight. And then tomorrow morning, when we get that closest approach with Hurricane Erin, the winds will come out of the northeast right along the Outer Banks. And that high tide cycle at 6:26 in the morning could coincide with that passing of the hurricane. And that brings the potential for major storm surge implications, at least for the Outer Banks and some of those east and southeastern facing shorelines. This is the current storm surge right now. This is above normally dry land. They're calling for 2 to 4 feet at its peak, especially the Outer Banks. And there is that rip current risk all along that 2,000 miles of real estate here along the eastern seaboard. That is something we're going to monitor. Stay out of the water. Phil?
You know, Diane, to that point, we've heard up to 20-foot waves could hit the Outer Banks. Are people there heeding local officials' warnings?
So we're not seeing those 20-foot waves at this point, but you can see that the surf is a little bit rough behind us right now. Honestly, it's just started to kick up probably within the last 45 minutes or so. This is Jeanette's Pier here in Nags Head. It actually was taken out by a hurricane about 22 years ago. They rebuilt again, and you can see there's plenty of people who are walking along this pier, looking at the waves. I'll be honest, for the most part, we've seen people staying out of the water today, and that is reflected in far fewer rescues being reported because of those dangerous rip currents along the coastlines. Now, we've seen a couple. Lifeguards have come, told them to get out of the water because of that danger. It's a double red flag day. It was yesterday. It's going to be tomorrow and potentially a couple days throughout the week. The biggest concern for many here in this area right now is, of course, North Carolina Highway 12. That is the road that connects the Outer Banks. Again, nearly 200 miles of these barrier islands, and this is how they basically get to each other. So if NC-12 has overwash or if it's broken up in some way, you can't get out. And that was the reason for those mandatory evacuations of Ocracoke and of Hatteras Island. And that's the reason why they told tourists, look, if you're not comfortable being stuck for a couple days, you need to go ahead and leave the Outer Banks right now because it takes time to get that fixed. We witnessed multiple North Carolina DOT crews today taking sand, fortifying those sand dunes because these are very narrow areas. 3.5 miles at the widest point, about 150 yards at the most narrow. We're already starting to see a little bit of overwash on NC-12 further south from here. Now, again, those are areas that tend to have it anyway at high tide, but we're seeing the initial impacts right now.
Yeah, listen to local officials. Omar, over to you. Like the scale of this up and down kind of the Atlantic coast of the United States is what's so striking here. We've been hearing about these dangerous riptides. What are conditions like in Atlantic City?
Yeah, so right now here in Atlantic City, the good thing is we haven't seen too many people at the beach, at least right now. Earlier, there were a lot more people, but right now we're just a few minutes away from high tide here. You can sort of see how far the water has come up. The waves have been pretty strong over the course of the day, but what's interesting, as you talk about sort of the scale and size of this hurricane, is, people here that we've been speaking to on the beach, they hear hurricane and they think it's going to be incredibly gusty, it's going to be incredibly rainy, and obviously we're not anticipating that direct hit, but it's these hazardous coastal conditions that officials are so worried about, but not too worried, clearly. We've been watching this amusement park. Things are still going on like normal there. It's more about the water itself. So they've told people to stay out of the water, which I can say since we've been out here this afternoon, even though people have been at the beach, they have been out of the water. This is also expected to be the beginning of Hurricane Aaron's effects in this part of New Jersey. We're expecting the peak to happen around tomorrow. That's when we could see waves up to 12 feet. That's when we could see some more of those wind gusts around 35 to 50 miles per hour. That is also when we could start seeing likely the major effects of coastal flooding, this area under a coastal flood warning as well. So the deception here from the people that we've been speaking to is, you look out, it's actually pretty nice out here. It's pretty beautiful. Windy, breezy. The waves, again, pretty thick and heavy as they've come in. But the reason they've told people to stay out of this water is the effects of rip currents. They make rescues up and down this coast for rip currents all the time on a regular basis. So in a situation like this, where you're looking at increased strength from the outskirts of Hurricane Aaron, especially so, they want people to stay away, even if it looks as beautiful as this.
Yeah, a critical, important message. Even if there is some deception there. Derek, I want to swing back over to you because there's actually a couple more storms trailing Hurricane Aaron here. What are you seeing?
Yeah, that's right, Phil. So we've got Aaron here. The parade of storms continues behind it, right? So we're watching this area of kind of a flare-up of showers and thunderstorms east of the Windward Islands. You can see the official forecast kind of trajectory of this cluster of thunderstorms, potentially moving over the extreme northeastern sections of the Leeward Islands as we head into the early parts of the weekend. This has got a 60% chance of development. We'll keep a close eye on it before it recurves back out to sea, the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And then we've got yet another wave that's just moved off the west coast of Africa. This has got a 40% chance of development over the next 7 days. It will likely get its act together here in the next couple of days, and then it's going to enter into kind of an unfavorable atmosphere. So we're going to monitor this closely. We'll see if it continues to make its trek westward towards the Caribbean. Phil.
Derek, Diane, Omar, critical eyes and ears for us in the hours ahead. We'll certainly be looking to you for updates throughout the course of the evening. Well, joining us now is Chris Cahoon-Noble, manager of Hyde County, which includes Ocracoke Island. You just heard Diane talking about that, under mandatory evacuation. We can see the trees swaying behind you, Chris. The North Carolina ferry system has evacuated, I believe, over 2,200 people, 1,100 cars from Ocracoke Island. The last ferry just left a few minutes ago. Do you know if everyone on the island is evacuated?
We still have some folks here on the island where we believe most of our visitors have left. We still have some diehard locals that are still around.
What's your message?
I think that Sure. I think that we've been really busy the last few days making preparations. We're pretty accustomed to having to make these preparations. And we expect our peak storm conditions and our peak storm impacts to begin tomorrow. Now, because this is an open ocean event, our biggest concern is, of course, Highway 12. Just as Diane said, that is our biggest concern right now. Now, Ocracoke is a true barrier island off the coast of North Carolina, and I say it's a true barrier island by the fact there's no bridge. It's only accessible by North Carolina ferry system or private boat or plane. Our main thoroughfare to Hatteras Island is the route that we utilize for emergency medical services. It's the route we use for our vendors. Also, it carries our largest volume of people in and out of Ocracoke Island. Now, in order to access that ferry field on the north end of our island, you have to travel down Highway 12 that is parallel to the ocean, and it's in very close proximity to the ocean. And that, of course, with the sheer amount of wave energy that we're expecting, we're very concerned about the the fragility of that section of Highway 12. Now, we've experienced road outages in the past with smaller storms for weeks, and we actually lost access for several months following Hurricane Dorian in September of 2019. And we do expect Erin to have similar impacts. Our next high tide is upon us now, and up until now, we've had really moderate ocean overwash of the highway with standing water already on each side of that highway and sand on the highway. It is still passable, but we do not expect that to last through this tide cycle. We're out monitoring conditions with the DOT, the Park Service, and the Sheriff's Office. And as you said, we've evacuated a little over 2,200 people over the last few days. And as that last ferry just left and Highway 12 being closed now, we're on the island until conditions improve.
We are all certainly thinking about you guys. We know you have a lot of experience in these types of moments and in the hours ahead. We're certainly prepared for it. Chris Cahoon, Noble, really appreciate your time.